Hi, everybody. This is Christopher J. Finn with a second live reading of The Stitches on the Stone, Chapter 2. Before I get started today, though, I thought I'd do something a little different. As you can see by the background, ooh, and I figured maybe I'll start with news. Stop! Don't leave yet. Don't leave. Not that kind of news. We all know the world's burning. I'm not going to expand on it, but in that um, same, I don't know, principle, whatever. I think what I'd like to talk about is that's right, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, also known as NORAD, which up until 1981 was known as the North American Air Defense Command, or NAC, which up until sometime between World War II and 1980 was known as the Continental Air Defense Command. Now, this is a joint U.S. Canadian agency tasked with tracking potentially preemptive strikes against North America, maybe even UFOs, like the balloon that flew over, one coast going to the other coast. But I'm not here to talk about that. Mostly. No. What I am here to talk about is. Well, hang on, I gotta hit next one. Okay. Boom. Hello. There we go. That's right. NORAD tracks Santa. And more importantly, this man. This man is Harry S. Shoup. I'm here to talk about Harry and the Sears and Roebuck Company. Now, back in 1955, Sears placed ads throughout the U.S. asking the kiddies, that is a thing, they asked the kiddies to call Santa direct. And here is where the story gets interesting. Now, either the Sears ad misprinted or somebody simply misread the phone number. But either way, sometime in December of 1955, the Continental Air Defense Command received a phone call on the red phone, which is a very specific phone with a very specific set of skills, uh, um, or basically the Pentagon's direct line to NORAD. So having that direct line, that meant that the person who answered it was going to be the lieutenant colonel himself, Harry. So, uh, phone rings, and you can imagine what he's like, holy shit! Here, the Pentagon's calling. What the fuck? So. He answers the phone, and instead of the Pentagon, it's this little kid just starts reading off his Christmas list. And he keeps going, just spelling off all these things he wants on Christmas until he starts to question the number he dialed, and he asks if this is Santa. Now, and to Harry's credit, I mean, how do you tell a 6-year-old he dialed the nuclear holocaust hotline? So Harry, without skipping a beat, says, "Ho ho ho! Why, yes, you are." And he asks the kid if he's been a good boy. Conversation, goes how conversation go with a 6-year-old. Hangs up, and a few minutes later, a little girl calls, and this carries on daily through Christmas, and they're hitting like 55 phone calls a day. Now, one of his coworkers, um, he drew a picture of Santa Claus in a sleigh on the north at the North Pole on this huge like 60 by 90-foot glass board. Remember, this is pre-digital age, so it was just a big glass screen, and the tradition was born, all from a Sears and Roebuck's misprinted ad and the quick wits of one lieutenant colonel. And that is the story of the NORAD Santa Tracker. And I thought that was the coolest story. And, not a lot of people would know that these days. So there you go. Nice, fun story. So let's get back to the read. Okay, so here we are. Chapter 2, The Stitches on the Stone. And I'm going to pick off right where we left off, which these chapters are set by the day. So today is November 2nd. We start off with Benji. Mic a little closer. There we go. Benjamin remained in his room until his mother and her new boy toy left for the evening. He entered the kitchen, popped a TV dinner into the microwave, and ate at the computer before retiring to his bed sometime after 11 p.m. Get in read mode here. Hang on. Okay. Sometime after 11 p.m., he woke at the crack of dawn and cursed the blasted sun bleeding through his window. His mind ached, aided by jumbled thoughts of shoe boots and cheap cigars. He didn't know what to make of the whole mother situation. What's worse, Benji wasn't entirely sure how to approach such a sensitive topic of conversation. So, resigning to his morning tradition, Benji grabbed the nearest pair of worn jeans sitting beside his bed, fluffed out a t-shirt he had slept in, then walked downstairs. His mother, Samantha Watson, sat at the dining room table with a mug of coffee in hand. He froze when she turned to meet his eye. She smiled sympathetically and pulled her knees to her chest, resting her heels on the edge of the chair. Samantha turned her head to the right, then brushed her dark wavy hair behind her ear before gesturing to a cup of coffee sitting across from her. Benji quietly walked to his seat, desperate to quickly collect his thoughts. He turned to the thermostat in the wall beside him, brushing off a few loose chips of paint laying on the discolored box. He just needed to remind himself of who was at fault, chase those building chills back down to his overly defensive subconscious. No, this looming conversation would be a one-way interrogation, and Benji was going on the offensive. He slid the temperature up to 71, took a breath, and sat. His mother sat up, lowered her head, then tapped the table beside her, cup of coffee with the tips of her fingers. Okay, I guess we need to talk. Yeah, I guess we do. Benji, I know why you didn't come downstairs yesterday. She paused for a reaction. Benji refused to respond. I'm sorry, Benji. It's not how I envisioned anything like this playing. Who was he? Benji interrupted in a cracked, straining tone. Sweat dampened his armpits and beaded around his sideburns. He is, she said, emphasizing the latter, Larry Tweedle. Old man Tweedle? Just Larry, Benji. God, Mom, he smells like ass. Why him? He doesn't smell like ass. Oh, sorry. God, Mom, he's old and smells like ass. Why him? Sorry. Still getting there. We're getting there. He doesn't smell like ass, old or new. And don't you curse at me. She slumped in the chair, glanced out the window, and shook her head. I don't know, honestly. I mean, he's a nice enough guy. Hell, I see him just about every day. Yeah, I know. I see him too. You know, every time he buys those cheap cancer sticks by the dozen. Fucking Tivolarios, he muttered. His mother raised a brow, and he quickly apologized. Tivolarios, a Colombian leaf his mother imported by the case, was Old Man Tweedle's smoke of choice. These exhaust pipes wrapped in shit clocked at a bargain price of $11.95 for a box of 24. They smoked like wet pine and left a thick bluish-white fog that could choke the life out of an elephant. Benji wasn't kidding about the smell either. The scent clung to anything and everything, leaving a lingering hint of old feces, mixed with the tang of something akin to burning leaves, and it attached to anything and everything unlucky enough to cross its haze. Then there was the man who was Old Man Tweedle. Benji wasn't exactly keen on the man's personal life. He knew the old fart owned Tweed's restaurant, but he was a complete mystery beyond that. The guy was crass and slightly overweight, with an air of wornness lingering about him. He reminded Benji of old leather or a cowboy long past his prime. His restaurant was upbeat and enjoyable, though the food was a bit on the salty side. Tweedle and Mom just didn't fit. I don't know what I was thinking, Benji. I mean, she rolled her eyes. It was Halloween, and you know how out of control the parties get around this town. I was drunk, and he was charming. She paused. God, he was charming. I get it, Benji snapped, chasing down a bitter lump forming in his throat. Tweedledoo, come on, Mom. Couldn't you hook up with some young guy? Isn't that what all divorced moms do? Hey, I'm not divorced, she said, then added, I think. The words were drawn and mixed with humor. His mother sat back in her chair, raised both hands to her temples, and shook her head. I don't know what I was thinking, she chuckled, then sighed. God, it was a fun night, though. Way too much information. Honestly, I was lonely. It was a party and nothing more, I promise. You're not bringing him back here? He asked. Samantha promised she would not. Okay, I guess. It was a bit hardcore to see first thing in the morning. Should have seen it the night before, she teased, sticking out her tongue while raising both brows. Benji sighed, and Samantha laughed. Then she sat back and asked, Say, would you mind opening up for me? I've got to hit the bank before going in, and I need to make a few stops for inventory. I'll be by around noon. I guess you're not going to go see Tweedledum, are you? She tapped a finger to her lip in mock thought. Then, before Benji could protest, his mother giggled and assured him she would not, at least not this morning. Satisfied with his mother's cryptic answer, Benji shuffled out the door and pedaled up Dilthy Street East, crossing Davis Street, the first leg of a 3-mile ride. He rode past the overpriced townhouses lining Dilthy Street West, offered a hearty middle finger to the 2-story monstrosity owned by the town's pain in the ass, Janice Mayfair, and focused on the remainder of the trip. Homes turned to storefronts, storefronts to buildings. Stackhouse Sam's Smokery lay on the west side of Main Street in Lorridell, set away from the center of the businesses catering to Lorridell's city workers. Here, the street widened to 4 lanes and parking spaces were metered. Saturdays were less busy, yet, and to Lorridell's credit, far from desolate. Many of the city workers opted to work during the weekends, and in turn, so did the lawyers, judges, and hell, probably the janitors. The Smokery became a meeting ground for the aging workforce, and where many deals were cut and sewn on the couches it provided. Benji propped up his bicycle against the storefront window, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. He paused and inhaled the lingering tang of imported tobacco and smiled. Good leaf on its own is a natural, elegant incense, inviting a calm sense of serenity in an otherwise acrid, pompous world. He had yet to meet a person who recoiled from fresh, unlit quality tobacco. Benji flipped the light switch beside the door, and a series of 9 soft yellow bulbs illuminated the interior. He moved to the bar top counter on the right and flipped 3 stools to the floor. After spacing each stool equally, Benji shuffled to the rear of the shop and unlocked a large walk-in humidor housing most of the pricier smokes the Smokery offered. Next, he circled 3 small displays of peripherals, lighters, cigars, cigar cutters, rolling papers, and the like, to a moderate-sized lounge, fluffed the pillows lining a dark leather love seat, then checked the ashtrays on each of the 3 end tables before returning to the counter. He pocketed a fresh pack of Parliaments, then walked to the hall leading to the restrooms and his mother's office, and returned with a cash drawer. Benji dropped the box into the register and sighed. It was early, the sun barely cresting over the peaked commerce buildings, and yes, it was Saturday. It was going to be a dreary day in the hood. The first twinkling of the hanging doorbell chimed at 10:30 a.m., startling Benji. He glanced up and smiled at the old man shuffling in. Hi there, young man. Your mother not in today? Nah, Judge. She had some errands to run. She'll be in later. Benji replied. Judge Rod, retired now, had been the reigning circuit court judge throughout the 1960s until he departed from the bench in 1983, rumored to have fallen asleep during a highly publicized case. These days, he'd offer advice to anyone who'd listen. Nice enough guy, Benji supposed, but a few matches short of a pack. The judge slipped onto a bar stool and laid a black Trilby hat on the counter. His eyes drifted to the right, and he tapped a bony finger on the edge of the polished wood bar top. The man's mouth drooped slightly, and Benji thought he might stroke out right here in front of him. "Judge?" Benji asked. The old man glanced up suddenly, thin wisps of hair bouncing about his ears. The old man croaked. Then, as if there hadn't been a moment of uncomfortable silence, he raised his hand and shakily pointed to the humidor. "Grab me 3 of those Churchills, would you? The Gisberts, if you'd be so kind." Relieved, Benji nodded and entered the humidor, pausing to enjoy the aroma of fragrant tobacco lingering in the moist air. The judge impatiently waved left, nodding when Benji reached the end of the center rack and the Gisberts. Benji returned with the cigars, unfolded a cloth napkin, and presented the 3 to the judge. The old man scooped them up and placed 2 in an old leather case he had tucked away in his dark overcoat. He dropped a $10 bill, 2 quarters and a dime, and 3 pennies on the counter, then meandered to the lounge area. The door opened, bells jingled, and a portly, thick-faced, middle-aged man dressed in a tweed suit, a dark overcoat draped over one meaty claw. He waved to the judge, who nodded before bending at the hip, his hand greedily searching for the armrest. "The old dog's still kicking about, eh?" Larry Tweedle asked. Benji then walked to the counter. "You know, I fully expect to find that man sprawled across Main Street, shit-stained and goat-eyes," he continued, not bothering to lower his voice. Larry and Benji watched while the judge rolled on his heels, finally landing in a lounge chair seat. "It's like watching someone force out a slow turd," Larry mused, chuckling. Finally, he smiled and thumped the counter, returning his attention to Benji. "Benji, old boy, I feel like a celebration is in order. Why don't you get me one of those Grey Cliff stogies, would you? I'm in need of a good smoke." Benji didn't reply. Oh, he wanted to confront this bastard of a man who defiled his mother in ways. Well, he didn't know exactly how, but all the choices were terrible. What could he say, or how? Instead, Benji took a breath and moved to the humidor, knowing he should have never agreed to open the shop. Mom must have planned this encounter from the get-go. God damn if he didn't fall for it. The top-end cigars, backed against the window, sat for exorbitant amounts of time before purchase and were constantly watched by his mother. He knew the brand Tweedle wanted. It was one of the better blends they stocked. He plucked the cigar from the glass-covered box and returned to the counter. Mr. Tweedle reached for the cigar. Benji pulled his hand away. "Money first," Benji demanded. Mr. Tweedle's brows rose in question. Benji extended his free hand, then gestured for the cash. Mr. Tweedle scowled briefly, pulled out his wallet, and slapped the leather on the counter. "Money first. There's no trust these days." He turned toward the lounge and spoke loud and firm. "No trust!" The judge wheezed his agreement. Benji moved to retrieve the wallet. "It's in there, my boy. No need for the dramatics," Mr. Tweedle said smoothly. "Now, why don't you be a good lad? Reach under the counter there and hand me a glass of that brandy your mother's hiding." "We don't serve booze," Benji replied coldly. "The hell you don't." Mr. Tweedle rapped 2 knuckles on the counter. "Out with it, and give me a match while you're at it." Benji tossed the man a pack of matches. He made no other moves. Old man Tweedle snipped off the tip of his Grey Cliff, lit, and pulled on the cigar, the flame bouncing between puffs. He shook and tossed the smoking match to the counter, never taking his eyes from Benji. "Right, so I take it this," he motioned to Benji, "display has something to do with your mother?" "You deny it?" "Not at all. It was a hell of a night," Mr. Tweedle rasped. "I take it you heard." Benji shook his head, then pointed toward Tweedle's feet dangling beneath the bar. Mr. Tweedle glanced down and chuckled. "The shoes. They always tell a story, don't they? Where you're going, where you've been." He lifted his leg and heeled his shoe on the counter. "Like these, for instance. You know what they are?" Benji admitted he did not and stated he didn't care. "They call them Bronco boots. I couldn't tell you why, mind you. The damn things look like a shoe to me, but there you have it. Bronco boots." He tapped the heel cap, ran a finger down the dark stitching to its raised heels, then slapped the cuff of his pants before dropping his boot to the ground. You know what they say about me? That you're an asshole? Benji retorted, gasping after the word slipped past his lips. The guy was babbling, and each word pushed heat into Benji's cheeks. He didn't mean to say it, but he'd be hot damned if he's taken it back. Good answer, but no, Mr. Tweedle replied, without so much as a raised brow. It says I'm a man about town. He raised his hands. This soul-sucking town, apparently, in all its fucking glory. The booze, dear boy. He fanned his throat. I'm parched. No, Mr. Tweedle, we don't. Larry! Call me Larry. I think we can push past the formalities at this point, don't you? He emphasized the word push as if he was straining, then smiled. Get the bottle. Hell, have a drink with me. I hate drinking alone. He turned. Judge, you deaf bastard! Judge! Larry shouted. Brandy? The judge looked up, then returned to his cigar, ignoring him. Larry chuckled, then motioned with 2 fingers before tapping both on the bar top. Benji relented with a sigh. He pulled a set of keys from the hook underneath the bar, unlocked a small cabinet beneath the register, and set a bottle of Hennessy on the counter, along with a rocks glass he wasn't entirely sure was clean. He poured a single shot and slid the glass to Larry. Larry looked to Benji expectantly, shrugged, and lifted the glass in toast. Alone it is, he stated in mock sadness. Upended the drink, smacking his lips as he returned the glass to the countertop. Drop me another. A commotion outside caught their attention. Saturday patrons filled the town center walk, some peeking in, others walked by without giving Stackhouse Sam Smokery a passing glance. As he moved to refill Larry's drink, Benji noticed a group of women approaching the storefront. Hell, they were nearly darting into the street outside his window. Larry raised a bushy eyebrow, pulled a deep drag from his cigar, and cocked his head. What do you suppose is going on out there? He asked. Benji shrugged. Hell if I know. He craned his neck over the cash register, then huffed. He wasn't sure, but Benji thought he caught a glimpse of a man dressed in full pirate garb sauntering up the sidewalk. He returned his attention to the gathering group of women. Benji didn't recognize any of them, paying little mind to adults who didn't frequent the store. Still, they looked like what? Moms? Grandmothers? They sure seemed obsessed with the pirate. Okay, he'd buy that, but who wouldn't? Benji poured the drink. Will you look at that, Larry said. He absently slid his hand to the rocks glass. Both Benji and Larry turned to the 7 women standing in the front of the store. 3 more must have joined the group while their attention was on the pirate. A woman wearing a floral coat and a pink scarf wiggled 4 fingers in the pirate's direction. A taller brunette turned to her with narrowed eyes. Larry snorted and downed the second glass. He propped his elbow on the bar and rested his chin into the cup of his hand. What is going on? Benji asked, more to himself than Larry. Before either could answer, the first of the 7 women whirled, arcing her fist against the taller brunette's chin. Her head snapped back and she stumbled from view. Behind the smaller pugilist, now crouching, was a 3rd woman wearing knitted white gloves balled into tight fists, ready to pounce on the 4th, who seemed frozen in her tracks. She glanced at her hand, opened her palm, and smiled. Soon after, she was tackled, adding to the growing pile of grappling women. Those who stood lunged at the pirate. They wrestled, 2 falling to the ground, leaving the other 2 standing. The first, a snarling, hefty blonde, grabbed a petite redhead woman by the nape of her neck. She rammed her face against the door to the smokery. The redhead retaliated with an elbow, striking the nose of her attacker. Both fell into the cacophony of grunts and screams. Feet rose above the windowsill, followed by a mix of multicolored bodies intertwined in this odd pastel-colored rumble. Pink rolled on tweed, wool over nylon. He couldn't tell who was attacking who. They all seemed to have fallen into a mindless, prizeless cage fight. Just, without the cage. Benji found it both fascinating and deeply disturbing. The pirate lurched away with a yelp, back through the door of Stackhouse Sam's smokery, and skipped away from the sidewalk. He pushed the door closed, drowning a wave of screams into hushed grunts. The man, gasping for breath, released the door and slowly stepped from the entryway. Larry turned to Benji, pursed his lips, and shrugged. The judge glanced over a cloud of lingering smoke, smacked 3 dry pulls off his cigar, then shakily searched for a light. The 7 women stood and turned to the closed door of the shop, mouths agape in confused, sloppy pouts. Their eyes, a mix of blue, brown, and hazel, glossed momentarily. They blinked in unison. 3 out of the 7 sported swollen eyes, the blonde bleeding steadily from a cut over her left temple. All eyes followed the pirate as he backed away from the door. Then, as if a switch had flipped, the women quietly gathered their belongings and parted ways. That was that. Larry dropped both hands into his lap. Benji, not knowing what to expect, what had just happened, or what he was supposed to do about it, backed himself into the shelf behind the register and knocked 3 boxes of Marlboros to the floor. A waft of heavy musk stung his nose and watered his eyes, forcing him to breathe through his mouth. The pirate wore a loose-sleeved poet shirt, complete with frilly cuffs that showed hints of yellow along the base of his neck and armpits. Long lines of mud and dirt sat in patches from shoulder to buttocks, with 2 great pieces of dark clay crusted against each cheek. He held a mop of something, looked like a dead cat to Benji, in his left hand. His right hand flexed from an open palm to a loose fist. The man turned, dark eyes wide and frightful, hair matted with a good 2 days' worth of unshaven scruff peppering his cheeks, and locked eyes with Benji. Benji raised a hand in a timid wave, unsure of what else to do. Call the cops, maybe? "Oh, man, yeah," the pirate rasped, and shot to the bar, grabbed the bottle of Hennessy, and topped the rocks glass. "Hey!" Benji snapped, stepping forward. "I got this," Larry husked behind a raised hand. The pirate turned to him, raised the glass in toast, then upended the glass in one oddly smooth stroke. "You haven't paid for your tube," Benji complained. Larry, ignoring Benji, smiled and offered his hand. "Larry Tweedle, bad about town," he offered. Ed Menzies." He shook Larry's hand. "The pirate!" Larry exclaimed happily. "Yeah, right. Pirate. That's me. This is Benji, and the stiff on the couch is the judge." "Hi," the man offered, raising his glass in salute. He blinked, then focused on the bottle of Hennessy. Larry motioned to Benji with a nod, and before he thought to argue, Benji poured Edward a full glass. Ed knocked the drink back in a single gulp. He turned to the window and scratched a line above his left brow. "What was all that about?" Benji heard himself ask. It was as if someone acted for him, speaking through a microphone from a distant computer. The question didn't solidify into consciousness. It didn't even register as his own. That? Edward turned his nose to the street. "Crazy shit, yeah?" "Ed the pirate, no truer words have been spoken," Larry commented. "What did you do? Diddle one of their husbands?" Benji chuckled. "Yeah, man, those ladies were pissed." Ed thought on that for a moment, then responded. "No." He paused, then emphasized his denial, saying, "No, at least I don't think so. Shit, I don't know what that was about." Edward lifted his leg and displayed a long, angry scrape along his calf. "Crazy bitch scratched me." "Maybe they have a thing against pirates." Both men turned to Benji, who offered a limp shrug. Ed reached for the bottle. "Maybe you should slow down with that, Ed," Larry said. He slid the bottle to the edge of the counter. Benji capped it and stored the brandy in its case below. "A few more of those and we'll be dragging you out the door," Larry said, then leaned behind Edward's back, pinched his nose, and raised both eyebrows. Benji laughed, then straightened when Ed locked eyes with him. "Yeah, okay," Ed replied. He ran his left hand over his chin, then glanced down at the mass of hair clutched in his hand. He dropped the thing in the bar. "Just so damn thirsty." Benji eyed the furry little thing. Bits of sand peppered the entirety of the limp mass, and he thought he caught the hints of a red ribbon beneath the strands of dark hair. He winced. "If you don't mind me saying so, Eddie, you smell like a cow's crusty asshole. Have you been wandering around like this since the party?" "Party?" Ed asked, before lowering his head to his right shoulder and then pulling in a breath through his nose. If he detected anything rank about his person, he didn't show it. "Halloween thing. Town does it every year," Benji offered. You were there, weren't you? Or is this one of those? He snapped his fingers. What do they call it? Life choices? Once again, Benji stifled a laugh. He was beginning to like this Larry fella and had to remind himself of the crimes he committed not 24 hours ago. One mental image of those rotten Bronco boots, which weren't boots at all, pulled them angrily back. Fake bastard. Halloween party, sure, I guess. Makes sense, right? He lifted his head. You got some water, kid? I'm so thirsty. Benji nodded, snatched up the rocks glass, and walked to his mother's office, moving to the bathroom sunken into the left wall. He filled the rocks glass from the tap, returned, and offered the drink to Ed. "You've been sleeping under a bridge?" Larry asked. Ed nodded, then downed the drink. "Under a bridge?" Larry stated, while tossing his thumb in Ed's direction. "I didn't think we had any bridges around here. Not close by, anyway," Benji replied. "Oh, we do. Plenty of them. I can think of 3 within a mile from your front door. None I'd care to sleep under." "Man about town," Benji grunted. Larry brightened and pointed to Benji. "No, it's not a bridge. It's a train bridge." "Got those too," Larry agreed. "The tracks? You mean down by the crypts?" Benji asked. The crypts, slang for the abandoned buildings surrounding Keeper's Pond, a small retention area he and his crew, consisting of Mary Keptine and Lucas Mendez, his 2 best friends, frequented daily. Holidays cut into their schedule, the Halloween bash included, so he and his friends had taken a forced reprieve from their daily routine. "Crypts? Where the hell do you kids hang out?" Larry asked. "The old warehouse is near the switchyard." "Yeah," Ed agreed. "Right there. That big bridge." He contemplated this for a time. "I think that's my home." Finally, he reached into his back pocket and placed his wallet next to Larry's. "I have this, but it doesn't feel like me." "You're a strange dude." Larry swiped up the wallet. "Judge not, young lad." Larry opened the wallet. "It says here you're Edward Menzies. Lives on Abbott Street." "Uh-huh," Edward agreed. "I looked. I didn't find any Abbott Street. So I gotta live down there, right?" He scratched the cheek of his ass, and a lump of mud fell to the floor. "Everywhere I go just leads back there." "Oh, come now, Ed. Abbott Street is just a few blocks away," Larry said. And Benji confirmed the statement with a nod. "It is?" Ed asked hopefully. Larry smiled. "Would I lie to you?" He raised a finger at Benji. "Don't answer that." He returned to Ed. "You smoke?" "I don't know." "Benji, be a lad and grab our pirate friend here a stogie. Something smooth, like one of those Maduro Robustos. Humidor, far right." "You still humidor, far right," Larry repeated impatiently. "Unless cow ass is the only thing you want to smell in here for the next few days." Benji reluctantly returned to the humidor and pulled a single from the section housing the Nicaraguan blends. He laid the cigar on a cloth napkin on the counter. Larry snipped the cigar's tip while continuing his conversation with the befuddled pirate. "Now here's what we're going to do, Ed. You're going to stick this cancer rod in your mouth and pull on it like you're sucking a golf ball through a straw. Then, so I can stand the smell of you, you and I are going to enjoy a smoke while we walk up to Abbott Street and see about finding your home." "Shouldn't you go to the hospital or something?" "Nonsense." He clapped Ed on the shoulder. "This man's fit, coherent, and by my estimation, sloshed." Ed smiled. "I do feel pretty good," he admitted, showing the hints of a stagger. "You should. You're down about 6 shots in a few seconds, you crazy bastard." Benji inspected the rocks glass, estimating it to be about 3 inches tall. 6 sounded about right. "You think we can find my house?" Stranger things have happened. Larry stood, threw his coat over his arm, handed Ed his wallet, and then retrieved his own. "Benji, we're on a mission of mercy for all the chimes and bells. You'll say hello to your mother for me, won't you?" He waved and escorted Ed to the front door. He slapped Ed in the back and said, "Try not to piss off any more of the women out there, will you?" "Hey!" Benji pointed to Larry. "You owe me for those." "Mission of mercy, Benji, my boy." He wiggled his fingers at Benji. "Just put it on my tab." And they were gone. Benji dropped his head into his hands and balled both fists, rapping his knuckles against his temple. God, did he walk right smack into that one. So damn stupid. 3 taps on the counter pulled his attention to see the old judge standing at the bar with a 10 spot and some change in his shaking hand. "What?" He paused. "What do I owe you for the cigars?" Benji chuckled before his eyes fell on the gaudy mess of nylon hair sitting next to him on the bar. He shook his head and giggled, which slowly rose to a full gut laugh. And this is the end of November 2nd. And stay tuned next week for chapter 3, where we will return to Janice, we will return to Ed, and I believe Benji, although he may not be in the mix on that one. I hope you enjoyed the read. If you like it, please like and subscribe. You can visit me on twitch.tv / Boogie Rags. You can visit my website at christopherjfinn.com. And if you feel like it, leave a comment below. I will catch you guys on the flip. Thanks for watching.